Today, we're going to talk about battling discontentment in motherhood, and even more specifically with stay at home motherhood, because I think that a lot of mothers can struggle with this, but especially stay at home moms. But stick around. Your husband can still listen to this episode with you. Elisha's obviously here, and we're going to also just be touching on discontentment in parenting in general and some mindsets and thoughts around that. So I hope you stick around and join us for this episode. If you enjoy it, give it a thumbs up. We love when you guys screenshot the podcast and share it in your stories, share it with other people in your communities. That not only helps the podcast get out to more like-minded people, but it's a true joy for us to see what episodes you guys are enjoying. So thank you, and we're going to get into the episode.
The Now That We're a Family podcast.
All right, Catherine Joy, when it comes to the topic of motherhood and finding contentment, you are a true inspiration to me, because when I look at how you've truly grown in your affection and your desires, and you've really submitted them to the Lord, it is an example, I think, of true discipleship, truly understanding who's Lord of your life, and then wanting your values to be aligned with your Lord's values, surrendering them to Him. And I say that to say, if parenting, whether people look at your mother, they look at my mother, they can look at you, it's so easy to disregard what they're doing and say, well, they've got a natural bent towards motherhood, or they've got this gifting for teaching or for domestic care. And while there may be different natural inclinations that some men and some women have that could lend to them being better in certain fields and certain practices, I know that that's not necessarily the case with you. It wasn't the case with my mother. You can speak to us, with your mother.
Not with my mom.
Your natural bent was not one of wanting to just rear children and nurture them in the home and be somebody that was pouring into your household. That wasn't your natural inclination when we were dating, when we were first married, and that has become the true desire of your heart. Maybe it started as a conviction and saying, oh, this is what the Lord wants for me, but then you didn't just leave it at that and say, well, I'm going to, I think people can do two things there, and I don't think either one of them are necessarily right. One is you rebel against that, and you say, you know what, I'm going to pursue my happiness. I think that I can be obedient to God in a different way, and I'm going to pursue this thing that I think is a calling on my life, and you ignore that direct command and calling of the mother. And then the second one is, I'm going to lay my life down. I'm going to be a martyr in the home, and I'm going to be this sacrificial lamb that is dying to myself and wallowing in the reality that I had to lay down my worldly ambition for the sake of the home. And both of those, I think, are wrong, because they both do a disservice and ultimately are a result of unbelief when it comes to what God has said about the family. Fathers, mothers, being in the role that we are in the home is unequivocally the most glorious position we can have on earth. There is no other title that we could ever attain or pursue or desire here on earth that is more glorious and to be honored than father and mother. CEO or pastor, elder, none of those come close to the glory that God has put to the value and the weight of father and mother. And so I think you saw that. You didn't see that early on. And then you adjusted your convictions and your belief and eventually your affection around that. And now it's like you don't have to try to make yourself be content at home. You're like, are you kidding me? This is the greatest thing ever. And I think that's a real inspiration.
That's sweet of you to say. It's funny because I'm thinking as you're talking of an email that I got from a really well-meaning woman, and she just said she felt it was really sad that I felt the need to, I was growing a career and all those things when I was like, doing YouTube or pursuing that and my little things. And she was like, I just think it's really sad that you felt the need to make yourself small. And I think that that's just an interesting perspective, because in my my worldview and my mindset. That's not at all what has driven the decisions that a lot. Oh, wow. I am having a hard time talking today, you guys. What has driven the decisions that Elisha and I have made in regarding me being a stay at home mother, or even being a stay at home mother that's not a full time working mother anymore? It's where I feel like my impact is the greatest, where I'm the most fulfilled, where I have the most joy and creativity and energy and passion. And that hasn't always been the case, like Elisha was saying, but I don't feel in any way that has been making myself small, because I don't see the menial tasks that I do each day as what actually being a mother is. Every single role has menial tasks that we have to do. I spoke to this briefly on Instagram, but a doctor, they like hand out a medication, or they have to clean, I don't know, maybe they have to clean their surgical items or something like that. Or a teacher, they have to do menial tasks in their classrooms. They have to clean the classrooms, they have to organize paper clutter, they have to do all this stuff that's really boring. And when it comes to a mother, we say, oh, motherhood is, changing diapers and doing the dishes and doing the laundry, like the big three menial tasks of domestic duties. And it's like, that is not what motherhood is. Just like being a doctor isn't doing the paperwork that they have to do after they do a surgery, or being a teacher isn't the menial tasks that they have to do. The impact that we love to focus on in other performance-based careers is not found in those tasks. You just have to do those. But there is a lot of impact that we discredit when it comes to being a parent in our homes. And I think that that's been a subtle perspective shift that I've had over the years. I have some practical things as far as how to find contentment in motherhood when you just weren't the one running around wanting to grab the babies and hold them. I always felt like that was a hindrance to me in my life when actually Elisha's sister, my best friend all through high school, she would just run up to anyone with a newborn baby and want to hold the baby. And I was like, you're tying yourself down. I'm going to go play volleyball. Like, what are you doing with your life? Like, you enjoy doing that. She was a baby person. And I thought that was so cool, but that wasn't naturally me. I still don't pick up other people's babies as a general rule. But I adore my own children. It's very different when it comes to your own mothering. But like, I hated cooking, all those things. But like Elisha said, I think finding fulfillment in motherhood started as a conviction that it was something worth learning to love and worth learning to do well. And that is the home management. That's also the emotional management. That's the personal management, the time management, the hospitality, all of those things that go into being a mother. And I just want to grow and grow in those areas. But before we dive into the practical aspects of how to keep yourself engaged in motherhood when the big three menial tasks are not doing it for you, and you just aren't stoked on life when you've got little toddlers that can't talk back very much, and you have just like repetitive tasks to do in your day. I do want to hear from you, Elisha, on just the mindsets around parenting that you've had recently.
Yeah, well, you even said something just now. You said you had the conviction that it was something worth learning to love or something like that. I can't remember verbatim what you said. And I think identifying where our affections are coming from is really crucial. I was talking to Luke earlier today about Psalm 119. Psalm 119 is just littered with David crying out, Lord, make me love your commandments. Lord, why do I have this disposition to not do what your word says? My affection is not submitted to you. Help me to love what you love. He's just saying that in a bunch of different ways. Saying like, Lord, okay, I know your law, your commandments are good. Help me to see that and to love it. Because I naturally don't. I naturally do not love that. And that is something that I think as Christians, we need to constantly be praying and going before the Lord and pleading with him, Lord, change my affection to what you would have me be passionate towards, to have me love what you love. And of course, we can only do that when we go to God's word, when we see the nature of him, when we see his character and what he loves, and then we say, whoa, I don't know if I love that right now. Lord, help me love that. And like I said at the beginning, you go from Genesis to Revelation, and the high place of family you can't compare it with any other thing. I mean, it was the first institution God put into place. It has stood the test of time longer than any government, than any man-made institution or organization. That title, mother and father, I think it's so easy to push off because wow, what must you do in order to gain that title? You get married, consummate your love, and like you've got the title, mother or father. I know it's not that easy for everyone, but that is something else that the Bible speaks directly to as well, that children are a blessing. And when people are not able to have children, you pray for them. You mourn. You say, that is a sad thing. You pray that the Lord would have a miraculous conception, which he has been faithful to do in his word and even in modern day history. So you say, no, you cry out to have the privilege of father and of mother. And when it does become something that you have, you're in that role, you treat it very seriously. You don't say, okay, this is just a building block to my personal goals and ambitions, and it's a good thing to have in my resume so that I can pursue whatever else I have on my heart. It's like, no, this thing that you are able to walk in right now is glorious. And it's so glorious that it's the language that God has chosen to use in how he relates to us. He is our father. He calls us his family. He calls us his children. We're brought into his household. And he uses that language because there's already a preset value on it that he's proclaimed in his word. We don't have to go and say, I wonder if family's valuable. Like God calls us his family. No, we know that family is a precious thing, that fathers and mothers and the children are a precious thing. And that's the institution that he's chosen to use as the relation that we are to him. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And he first created it amongst men. He said, okay, he created a family. Before he even related to us as family, he created the earthly family. And we valued it. He said it was holy, it was consecrated. And then from there, he goes on to then identify with us through those same familial terms. And so I think you identifying that, wow, this is something that is worth changing my affection to is step one. So I would put that as like belief. What do you believe about fatherhood and motherhood? And so belief is a crucial thing, obviously. But then below that is affection. Are your affections aligned with your belief? Because just because you believe something doesn't necessarily mean your heart and your affection and your emotions are aligned with that. I think that happens all the time as Christians where we think, oh boy, I think this thing is right, but everything in me wants to do the opposite thing, or I value the opposite thing. And so we pray that the Lord would change our affections towards this thing that we believe to be right and holy. And then you talked about, in addition to that, just practical things. So I think of like belief and then our affection / like emotion towards something, and then practical help and practical growth towards supporting your emotion and your belief in those areas is crucial. And that's exactly how I've seen you do that in regards to motherhood.
Yeah, I think something that's very undercutting of our belief system is the voices that we hear on a consistent basis. And that might be family members, that might be best friends that maybe we grew up with in high school and now we no longer share the same belief system as them. It might be social media. I think of that statement that we become like the 5 people we spend the most time around. And that comes down to what they value, we value. And so obviously that term is broader as far as like, oh, your income will match the 5 people you spend the most time around, or but because of that whole statement, like your habits will start to mimic the 5 people that you're around. And that's definitely true for our value system as mothers. So what are the voices coming in? If they aren't grandfathered in, so I've got a hair in my eye. If they aren't grandfathered in, like you don't have incredible godly sisters in Christ that are building you up and saying that what you're doing, your role is valuable, and you have people in your life that are telling you you're making yourself small, choosing to stay home or to mother your children to the best of your ability, whatever that is, then we need to bring in those outside resources. We need to be reading books that affirm what we are doing. We need to be listening to podcasts that affirm what we are doing. We need to be first and foremost in God's word is the ultimate affirmation that you are not wasting your time, you are not wasting your energy, and there's nothing out there that is going to fulfill you any more than you finding fulfillment right where God has you right now. And I think that that's something that is just very clear that we don't have to question. If we have children in our home, then we are in the center of God's will when we are mothering those children. We don't have to wonder what his will is for our lives. We don't have to wonder what his plans are for our lives. We are doing that right now, mothering these children in our home. And we don't have to wonder what God's calling is or any of those things. And so in a lot of ways, it's very simplified, and we can lean into that and be like, okay, am I going to grow in this area, or am I going to squander what God has given me to do? Am I going to steward it well, or am I going to kind of shuffle by and get by on jokes about my kids and jokes about my fatigue and jokes about how my body's changed after baby and all these things in a negative light, depreciating ourselves, depreciating our children, our husbands, and appreciating the high calling that God has placed on motherhood and family?
Katie, that's so good. And I think something that is all too common when it comes to being a Christian in general is we take something that God has said is good, and it doesn't quite resonate with our logic, and it doesn't resonate with our value system. And so we start using then worldly value systems to try to justify, or to try to validate, I should say, what God has called to be good. And I think that this happens all the time in parenting, where a father or mother will justify or validate pouring into their children because they say, okay, I will sacrifice advancements in my career, or I will sacrifice worldly accolades for the sake of pouring into my children. And maybe that child will become the person that cures cancer, or that person will start a nonprofit that gets water to the whole world. And there will no longer be any starvation in the world ever because of my child. And we use worldly metrics like that to justify what God has called sacred. That's not even using the right value system. A healthy individual coming from a family does not validate the family. God validates the family first and foremost. And are healthy individuals byproducts of a thriving family? Absolutely. But that's not even the point of the healthy family. And I think a lot of times we try to look at the finish line and an ideal outcome and say, okay, my sacrifice, and I go air quotes because, of course, if you actually see family for what it is, sacrifice isn't even the right word. But if we'll use the terms that people will use when they don't see family for as glorious as it is, we say, my sacrifice will be worth it if my child accomplishes this, this, and this in their life. And people will point to different figures in history, and they'll say, look at, so-and-so. I can't think of a person right now.
Edison.
Yeah, Thomas Edison. Look at Thomas Edison. He wouldn't have accomplished all that he accomplished if he didn't have his mother pouring into him from the time he was a child. And you think, oh, look at that. And it's using the completely wrong metrics to evaluate the value of motherhood and of fatherhood and of family. And you're like, no, Thomas Edison's mother her work wasn't worthwhile because of all that he accomplished. It was worthwhile because when they were a family, this kind of gets me emotional, sorry. Because I think this is so near and dear to my heart, where I was always looking beyond the here and the now. I thought, how will my time be validated? And it's only going to be by how my children walk versus, oh my word, when I'm wrestling with my boys, when we're sitting in the living room, when we're going for a walk in the park, we are image bearers of Christ. And he has commissioned the family to be his image bearers. Say, go out and take dominion and bear my image. What is there a higher calling? Can point to anything in the world that is a higher calling than that? And that's the commission that he gave first and foremost to the family. And we get to do that in every day of our life, in our existence, when we're doing that. And so it's such a demeaning thing to say, oh, Thomas Edison's mother is validated because all that he accomplished. And it's like, no, both Thomas Edison's mother and father, I mean, again, I don't even know their history, but that's a hypothetical. Their time was maximized because they were being a family. They were image bearers of God while they were in their home, while they were around the dinner table, while they were discipling their children. And in fact, the Bible doesn't even call you a successful parent unless you've got your children's children walking in the faith. And so, in other words, being a successful family is one, being image bearers of God and thriving, but then it's creating more families. You don't, creating a healthy individual isn't the end goal. It's creating another family that then creates another family. Play some piano, guitar, fiddle, mandolin, ukulele, your choice. Does that make sense? And when when it talks about God's legacy, it's never just your children, it's your children's children, which implies you raised up children to then go out and start families and to continue on that mission.
And I love that was just such a huge perspective shift when Elisha came to me with that concept of we are living out what God has us living out, what he would have us living out right now, just bringing honor and glory to him. And maybe only the angels are seeing it, right? This doesn't have to be on a world scale, but just by being his image bearers, by being faithful to him, by living in our roles, that brings honor and glory to him. It glorifies the system that he created. It glorifies the unity that he created and the relationships that he blessed us with. All those things, by honoring God's value system, we're bringing glory to him. And we do that today. We do that when our kids are little and they're toddlers and they haven't accomplished anything great. We do that whether we've accomplished anything great or not, by man's standards, right? The goal is just being a family today and stewarding our family in the best way that we know how unto God. And I think that just brought a whole new perspective to me that I'm not waiting for someday to see the fruit of my labor to see if it was worth it. And I think following that same logic, with Thomas Edison's mom, it's kind of like if we were to follow that same logic of like, okay, a woman sacrificed her life and then she had a son or a daughter and they went on to do great things. Well, I mean, it's kind of a life for a life, right? So like by using that logic, we could be like, well, if that mom had just pursued her passion, and I'm sure she had something great she could have done, and then maybe the kid didn't go on to do such and such, or maybe they did, but that's kind of irrelevant. Maybe they both could have done what they wanted to do if she wasn't sacrificing her life in her four walls and just wasting her life away. And so we have to look way bigger picture than the stats of what someone accomplishes with their life. We weren't put here on earth to accomplish things by man's standards and therefore validate our existence.
Yeah, that's exactly right, Katie, babe. And you're right. When you actually start doing, and that's what people do. You start looking at the math and you're thinking, oh, okay, motherhood or fatherhood is validated because what happened with their child. They made these sacrifices. And you can point to certain things where, like, there was true economical sacrifice. People, maybe leaving their great circumstances in Europe to come to the new land in America so they could worship freely and raise their children. They sacrificed materialistically for future generations, and that's an admirable thing. Mm-hmm. But they did it for the sake of the family, and they were being a family in the midst of it. And it's not that they're sacrificed as praise because of the thriving of the family, not because of the thriving of an individual. And I think that that's what gets twisted in people's brains is we have such an individualistic perspective on every single thing. It's like, okay, me maximizing my individual potential is the only reason I'm here on earth. And It's so funny because we want to maximize God's purpose for the home, and we've got and our lives in the home. And when you look at the qualifications of the high calling of an elder in the church or of a pastor in the church, being married, having a healthy marriage is one of those qualifications. Having your household in order is one of those qualifications. So in other words, it's like before you would ever consider moving on, like you never move on from family, but before you'd ever consider an outside ministry or an outside vocation from the home, it's like that's got to be in order, because it really undermines any other growth. Like a healthy church is only going to be as healthy as the families in it. And if the leader of that church is not leading his home first and foremost, then where are those families going to go? And there's not going to be long lasting fruit. And we get so fixated on in the moment fruit. We think like, oh man, if I just poured 3 years into this platform, I could get 1 million followers and they'd all hear this message. That's far more fruitful than me staying at home with 2 kids and not doing that. You're like, wrong. That's actually way wrong. The fruit of that is, first off, only what you can see with your eyes, and it's going to die out. It's not long lasting. And second of all, the fruit from the family is generational. It goes so much beyond your lifespan, and you've got to be able to look beyond your lifespan. And so you've got to view things from God's perspective, his value system. But then even when you use worldly metrics, which again, God does use human metrics too, right?
Yeah,
Like
yeah.
he keeps track of how many people are saved, and he keeps track of how many people were fed and, got out of those things do matter.
He has a little notebook up there. I don't
Yeah,
know
he's
the way
keeping.
you're saying this. I'm just picturing
What I'm
him
saying is that
the master
that's
tally.
documented in the Bible. And so I think it
Yes.
does
Yeah.
matter.
Yes, you're right.
Does that make sense? It's not like he's just saying, oh, nothing, 100 people don't matter. It's just God's bigger purpose. Like
No.
numbers are a part of God's bigger purpose. But he's going to do it according to his will and according to his means. And that's way slower and way deeper and way more faith-based than what we have a concept for, I think, in our general culture right now.
And obviously, this podcast is directed towards parenthood. There are exceptions to every rule, obviously, like Amy Carmichael, right? She never got married. She had an incredible adopted family that she ministered to. But we tend to put these exceptions on a pedestal and be like, okay, well, that is what we are supposed to strive for. That's the ultimate goal in giving your life and like sacrificing your life for the gospel, instead of just that impact of just faithfulness in marriage, just faithfulness to your children, and the generational impact that can have over time. We don't even know. The impact often does not happen in our generation. And I love that something that Elisha was telling me too. Something you were saying was all about how we're all characters in God's story, and just we want to be the best characters that we can be in his story. And the plot is so much bigger than us and our little life and our little individualistic pursuits. Now, okay, I'm not saying that individualistic pursuits are not healthy or important. I think that they can breathe new life into motherhood. And I think that a myth out there is that when you become a stay-at-home mom, you air quotes, lose yourself. You suddenly are just caretaker for these children in a nannying sort of way. And that's just not true. That excites very, very, very few people in this world. And being a homemaker, thriving in your home, being a mother, is not just taking care of tasks that anyone can do and thinking, oh, yippee skippy twang for me, like this is so fun. And I think that that's something that really helped me ease into motherhood. Now my kiddos, they're a little bit older. They're 6, they're 5, they're 3. They're talking a lot more. They're learning a lot more. It's a lot easier to be engaged with my children and what they're learning at this stage of life. But when we were home with a 2.5-year-old, a 1.5-year-old, and a few-month-year-old, it wasn't like they're like sweet and cuddly and stuff, but they weren't all that like intellectually stimulating or exciting when it came to like, I have other strengths and I have other abilities and I have creativity and I have ideas and I have all these gifts that I do feel God has given me. And instead of being like, okay, well, because I'm mothering these children, I cannot use those. We just have to shift our perspective on, okay, how am I going to use those in this season? God clearly gave me all these strengths. He gave you all these strengths. How are you going to maximize those in your home and use them now? We aren't supposed to just take our talents and hide them under a bushel. And I think I'm combining all kinds of passages here kind of Christian speak, but we aren't supposed to take our 1 talent, our 5 talents, or our 10 talents and bury them in the hole in the dirt and just be like, I'm not going to do anything with these. And I think that's what a lot of motherhood culture tells you to do. It's all about, I guess your life now is like survival, Starbucks lattes, and Target runs. And it's like, that is not motherhood either. That's not what we're called to do in our homes as our peak achievements for the day.
Yeah, and what's so powerful is that when you look at maximizing these talents within the context of your family, the home being the number one priority, it actually grows your capabilities. And when you are able to pour that creativity into your home, the abundance and the overflow is far beyond what your scope and what your imagination probably lent to before.
Oh, I
If
have
you,
seen that over and over and over just in my own little life.
yes,
I've blown out of the water the expectations that I had for myself. And I have no clue where we're going to continue to go. But it's incredible. The ceiling just keeps getting raised. The more I draw back, the more I say no to, and the more I feel like I lean into what's directly in front of me, which are the children in our home. And I feel like that you could say that for you too.
absolutely. And it's, again, it feels like if you just take a snapshot of the moment when you make a decision to say no to a work opportunity or to say no to like a speaking engagement opportunity at a women's conference, you think, oh, those, 150 women that I could have spoke to, but I'm staying home with the family this weekend. Instead, it looks like this net loss, right? Where
Mhm.
you're thinking, oh, numerically, this is a net loss. And of course, you do it because you know that family's priority and that's ultimately going to be a bigger win. But then, even using those metrics, by pouring into your family and having that in order and having that in place and systematizing it, you've been able to from there have that ministry of really hospitality. It's overflowing from the margins in your life that you've created because you did fixate on maximizing your time in the home, and you did like you you got serious about being a mother. I don't know what the right
Yeah,
verb
yeah.
is. You're like, I'm going to maximize my time here. I want to have a fruitful home. And all of a sudden you've got this margin. You've got excess time and energy and emotional bandwidth to pour into other people. And it would be the opposite if you were to go about it in the opposite way.
It's kind of ironic, yeah, because when you're pursuing all these outside things, you're really drained for the home. But when you're pouring into your home and your home starts to create its own energy and fuel you, we're talking about joyful motherhood, abundant motherhood. That's what's glorifying to God, not slovenly, complaining, just getting by motherhood. Then that pours out and you're able to actually do more outside your home and more outside in ministry when that hub is functioning in a healthy way than if you try to do the exact opposite thing and go from the outside in.
Absolutely. And that's what 99% of even Christian culture tries to do.
It's very tempting because we've talked about this a lot. What is it? It's like the easiest fruit to harvest. It's the low-hanging fruit, right? You can get a win right now. You could get this burst of dopamine right now by going out and having someone tell you you're great because you did something that was praiseworthy, and that's wonderful. And those things shouldn't stop. But maybe they need to stop for a season so that you can really pour into the roots of your home and then be able to outpour from that and be able to pick wherever you want on the tree.
Yeah, exactly.
Something I want to say though is boredom in motherhood is a plague. And it is something that it defeats us. It makes us tired. It makes us overwhelmed. It makes us grumpy and it makes us unhappy. And straight up, we aren't fulfilled when we're bored, but that's not going to be solved by an outside commitment like we think it's going to be. Now, sometimes it might be an outside commitment, and I'm not saying those don't have their place, but we have a lot of control over the boredom in our own lives. We were talking about this when it comes to sleep.
Yeah, and really quick, clarify how sometimes it might be an outside opportunity because
Sometimes there can be outside opportunities. Like technically this podcast is an outside opportunity, right? I'm in a studio, I'm away from our home, I'm not sitting in our living room, but we feel like I'm not actively hanging out with the kids.
Yeah,
You know what
and
I'm
I think
saying?
that this is an overflow from you having our home in incredible order.
Yes, I
It's an
would say it's an
outpouring
overflow too.
of that. If you were to neglect the home for the sake of coming and doing this podcast,
That has
then
also
it would
been
be
done before.
extremely counterproductive. And we've gone through brief seasons of that, and you've
Yeah.
identified it, and you've been like, no, that's not the case. Because I guess I would,
I wouldn't say, yeah, you don't get the cart before the horse.
yes.
Yes, I'm glad you pointed out that. And that could be a big motivator for you too if you have these things that you want to do outside your home and it's really motivating. That was really motivating for me to be like, okay, I need to figure out better home systems here so that this flows better because I have things I would like to do. And right now, this domestic stuff that's pretty basic is taking all my time and energy. Like cooking a dinner for my family is very hard. And then I cook it and the meat bounces like a rubber ball and it wasn't really satisfying for anybody. And now I don't have time to go have a hobby or have time to do anything socially or have time to be hospitable because I just put all my energy into being really bad at this thing. So it was a big motivator for me, I think, to get good at homemaking and get good at, educating our children. And these are all things I'm continually growing in. Yeah, congratulations. I have not arrived with a 6-year-old child. Okay. We are constantly learning over here. But starting out with the basics and then growing from that and growing from that. And the funny thing is that as you get better at things, you just start to love them more in general. Like as I got better at cooking, now I'm not just trying to get dinner done so that I can go do something else with my time. I'm actually making a more complicated dinner because I'm actually enjoying the process of it and I'm finding fulfillment in it. And my kids are joining me in the kitchen. And all of a sudden, this is something that's really fun for the whole family. So your appetites and your desires, Elisha and I have seen this over and over and over, can change to serve you and to serve what you are like mentally committed to, but maybe aren't enjoying in the moment.
Yeah. Maybe you could clarify this for me because I don't know if I 100% agree with it. You said it at the beginning and you kind of alluded to it there. Is these menial tasks being something that you can kind of almost systematize and put on autopilot so that you can get through them to the more important work. And I think that with where I'm at, I don't believe in such a thing as a menial task when it comes to something that supports the home.
Okay.
And even the way you just talked about dinner, it's being like, okay, the better you get at it, then you can move on to this hobby or this better thing. And again, you're the one, you do spend more time in the home than I do. But I've really come to believe with my time in the home, me, whatever, reading with the boys at nighttime or changing Lawrence's diaper when I have to change his diaper or picking up the living room with the kiddos, those could all be considered menial tasks. But I do think that is being a family. And in being a family, you are worshiping God. You are bringing glory to Him.
So I 100% agree with you, but I actually feel pretty strongly about this too. So I'm glad we're having this conversation. One, okay, reading to the kids. I love reading to the kids. There's relational equity going on there. It's enjoyable. Now, changing a diaper is rarely fulfilling unless it's like a really big one or something. You feel really good about yourself. Okay. It's not something that I think we were intended to find fulfillment from. Now, is it an act of worship? 100%. But I think something that really turned me off, and I think turns a lot of women off to actually embracing motherhood, is this mindset. There were these two belief systems that I felt when I became a new mother. One was, okay, it's kind of the feminist lie of you can do it all as if that was the goal. And so you should work your little face off and then be beat. And then you can also take care of your kids as well. And it's like, yeah, well, you can, but it's like totally fatiguing and you're wiped, right? But there's this mindset of like, pursue all your interests and hobbies and all these things. And they don't really say that on the flip side, you're just going to be wiped and exhausted and frazzled and overwhelmed if you're trying to do all of that. The other side was this side of like, motherhood is this act of worship. You are loving your family when you change your diaper. You are loving your family when you do your dishes. You are serving your home. And it's like, yeah, okay, all those things are true, but I do not want to get up in the morning to do all those things. Like they just don't excite me, you know? And so yes, I think those things are biblically true, but when you need something to be excited for in your day, that's not going to be it. Like if you're feeling like I feel like you feel a lot more passion and purpose in your job that you're doing now. Like you being a barista was serving our family. You were providing for our family. You were doing all the things that God calls you to do. It was an act of worship, but you didn't bounce out of bed in the morning like you do with the work that you're doing now.
Hmm.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like, I don't like changing diapers. I love homeschooling my kids. I love reading to my kids from the Bible. I love going to walks at the park. Like, I'm not talking about these hedonistic things that I'm dying to go do.
Yes.
But the dishes, it's like I get the dishes done as fast as I can, so I'm done and I can move on. Like,
Yes.
I'm not sitting there like loving on each dish and praising the Lord that I get to do it. Like, maybe I am praising the Lord while I'm doing the dishes, but that's not like what I live for.
Yes.
You know what I'm saying?
Absolutely. Yeah, and I 100% agree with you. I don't think that we are supposed to like make something more like you said, just dwell on each dish, or just be like, oh my goodness, thank God that there's another poopy diaper that I get to change, another opportunity
Like,
to
obviously,
worship
that's
Him.
great, but like, I'm not saying that it's not true that we
Yeah.
should have that heart of service and like, but I think when a lot of moms come to me that are like, okay, I'm battling discontentment in motherhood, it's because they feel that maybe that's all they should be doing.
Yeah, I guess I'm wondering if, because I think that this is something that's been really important for me as a father, and I think I hear it in other men a lot in the different Bible studies that I'm a part of, or men's groups that I'll be a part of, is this language. They'll talk about the routine things of being a dad that are, again, not at the same extent that you do. You're with the kids all throughout the day, but still they'll talk about the things of getting up with the kids in the middle of the night, or going on a walk with them to the park, or whatever the thing is, like, helping them brush their teeth and bathing them at nighttime, as though it's like this. Like, I think I don't want, I don't know if there is a way, when you look at how glorious a family is, it's like any activity that supports that is a worthy endeavor, and it's a good thing. And I know you're
agree.
saying that too.
I agree with you.
And so I'm not saying you shouldn't become more efficient in those things. And if they're not very enjoyable, you try to systematize them to make them more streamlined and efficient. But to think that you're doing that so you can move on to something beyond the family that's more important, I think is what the lie is.
Yes.
And because I really, and I'm saying this as a father, and again, I get it. Like, I'm not in the trenches as much as you are with the kiddos, but I do think the home and taking full thought and full care into where God's placed us right now as parents, I don't know if it really can be understated, the value that of the position that we're in right now, and the value of these next 15 years with our kids, or 20 years, or whatever. And so I guess, again,
Okay.
you're way more in tune to the women's voice around this, and I'm way more in tune to the men's voice. But I guess I just hear in men's voices around fatherhood a general lack of valuing family and of valuing parenthood, and of not understanding this privileged role that we have as fatherhood. And then it comes out in little ways, and it comes out in slight language that ultimately is devaluing the family.
And I like how your emphasis is on that. I think what we're getting confused here is housekeeping is not motherhood. And that's what I'm trying to separate. You could have a house cleaner come in and clean your house and be an incredible mother. And I think sometimes we think of housekeeping as motherhood. That is not motherhood. I love the relational aspects of motherhood. I want to get better at those relational aspects of motherhood. I think homemaking extends far beyond housekeeping and keeping your baseboards dusted. And it's the aura of your home. It's the peace in your home. It's when your family comes to the dinner table, do they feel like they are valued and they are welcome there, and you're creating these spaces for them? When they go to the living room, is it restful? When they go to their rooms, are they restful places? When your husband and you go to your room, is it a dump or is it restful? Like, are you having other people into your home that you can minister to? These are all bigger, broader things that I'm talking about here. And it's not necessarily I'm talking about get beyond these little tasks here so you can get outside of your family into a ministry position or an impact position or something beyond the family. I'm saying get those things done that are boring and whatever, they have to be done by somebody, and then move into the bigger, broader picture of what motherhood and homemaking is.
Hmm.
I'm not saying that I think that can be very fulfilling. I'm very fulfilled right now in those things, and not anything necessarily beyond that. Like I've said this before, I love being on this podcast, but I find way more fulfillment and enjoyment in homeschooling my kids. Like that can be a person to person basis, but that's just for me how it is. So I'm not saying rush to get beyond the family, but I am saying if you can simplify the dull, boring, repetitive tasks, do it,
Yes.
in my opinion. I mean, that's what the Get It All Done Club's all about.
Yes.
That's like the core value of the
Right.
Get It All Done Club
Yes.
is like, get the things efficiently done that you can, because dishes aren't necessarily relational. You know, have some time with your child that's relational. That is where I think the dishes have to be done, yes. Do they affect the environment of the home when they are not done? Yes. So I think they're very important. But do you see what I'm saying in all this kind of
and I didn't mean to
separating out those
nitpick
things?
that. I know I'm ultra sensitive to it right now because I think that I think I've been it's a common tone in the fatherhood space anyways, and that's what I said. Like I'm way more in tune to I think the general sentiment around fatherhood than I am obviously motherhood. You know, you're the one listening to mothers and you hear the tone from that, so you can speak to that far better. And I think I'm just ultra sensitive right now to this notion that, yes, you're right. It's valuable to get to raise a healthy individual, get them to 18 years of age, then you've done your job and you can kind of move on to your important work.
And
And
that's where we're talking about different things. You're
yes,
talking about actually raising children. I'm talking about the tasks that have to be done.
yes,
And do those play in to your home? Yes. Because I do think that it's not as effective to raise children in a house that is crumbling at the seams. They don't feel welcome there. Your husband doesn't feel welcome there. Everyone wants to get out of the home. So instead of being this peaceful place to be in, to rest, to recharge, it's a war zone. So I do think that it is well worth the time and energy it takes to become efficient at taking care of all the bases in our homes. It
Absolutely.
serves our family, and it's the foundation for everything that's built on top of that. These little tasks, these tasks I referred to as menial, are foundational, because anything else you try to build on that is not going to be real great. You know, if you get a vase of flowers that's beautiful and you put it on a dining room table with just like junk everywhere, it's not really going to pop in the same way that just a clean, restful space will with no extra, beauty in there.
absolutely. Yeah, I love the way you just said that. And I think that kind of goes into the, I talked about that you have to believe according to God's word and have your belief system structured around what the Bible says is true. And then you want your affection to be aligned with that as well. And again, you want to submit your feelings to truth and to what God says is true. And then you can set in practical things around that. And I think that you've done an amazing job at that. And that's something I'm extremely motivated to do, even on the fatherhood side of things. And I think I have on some level with, praying. And again, that's what's so crazy is that when you believe something to be right and true and your affection is not there, then you can start putting in practical things that support that, even when your affection and your emotions aren't pushing you in that direction.
That's like the number one way to do it, to start, for sure. You don't wait until you have the feeling for anything good in life.
That's exactly right. And I think that for a long time, because of your support, because of our conviction around parenting, we had a lot of practical things in place that supported the family and supported the home, even when our heart wasn't 100% loving it. It wasn't there. And of course, our home benefits greatly from that. And then in time, our heart comes around and it matures and it's, consecrated to the Lord. And so what are some practical things? I mean, I'm going to say some practical things that I think we've done, but things that I think oftentimes get overlooked, because you talked about the 5 people you spend the most time with having the biggest influence. And yes, I think that's such an important thing. You establish your beliefs and then you look at who you're around and you objectively say, wait, are they supporting me and pushing me in a positive way towards those beliefs? and you got to be honest. And then same thing with your media consumption. And it's crazy how capable we are of really, what's it called? Like when you,
I don't know the hand motions. Overlooking?
no, like we're really able to like customize, I don't know what the word is, like customize our intake of content and media if we're proactive. If we don't do that, then what we're naturally going to receive through media is not going to be supportive in promoting us towards godly belief.
Undermining everything that God values.
Yes.
Basically, that's it.
Yes. However, again, there's a bunch of things that we've gotten rid of altogether, certain social media platforms and certain subscriptions that were like, okay, maybe there is a way to customize this where it's supporting me, but we couldn't figure out those ways to customize it so that it was supporting our beliefs. And so we got rid of the thing altogether. But you look at like YouTube, and it's crazy how you're able to really curate your videos into suggested videos to where you want to be growing and what you want to be doing, right? And this often gets talked about in a negative way where it's like, oh man, you're in this echo chamber and it's just reestablishing your hardcore beliefs. And you're like, well, leverage that. Go to God's word and see what he says about something, and then curate your YouTube feed to be things that support you in the ways you want to be growing. And when a video pops up that's not aligned with that, you click on it and you say not interested, or whatever you say, it says what do you, like hide or something like that, or stop showing me this or something like that. And it's crazy how, and it doesn't stay that way forever, because all it takes is one moment of clicking on that recommended video, of whatever like the murder mystery is, and then the next day your feed's flooded with that, and so you got to go back and you got to clean it out.
You got to clear it out quick before they get you.
Exactly. Okay, I'm going to clear this out
we
here.
were talking about this the other day, how it's like you click on one video and then all of a sudden, like your tastes are almost defined for you because you like have a moment where you're feeling one way. You watch one video and now all of a sudden it's like bam, 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 bam. Yes. And then you click on 2 or 3 and all of a sudden you're like, I have this whole interest in, whatever it is. And I didn't have that interest 2 days ago.
Yes, that's exactly right. And so when you have those moments of objectivity, use that, log on to your YouTube. This is the whole setting up systems in place. Like, okay, I know where I want to be growing. Go subscribe to those people, turn on the notifications, unsubscribe from the people you're not interested in right now, hit not interested. You can hide, the shorts, that thing, you can hide that so it doesn't even show up on your homepage.
Nice. I didn't know that.
Yeah. You can X out of it. And then like every 30 days, you need to hide it. And then it's the same thing with Instagram. Go unfollow all the people that are not building you up, or mute them. If you think, I'm going to hurt their feelings, then you can mute them. At least I think so. This is what I used to do. I haven't been on Instagram for a long time. And so I don't know how it works now. And same goes with the literature in your home. We were blown away because we used to go to the library quite a bit with our kiddos, and we stopped going just because we started ordering books. We're like, okay, let's start investing in books that we want to actually keep in our home. So that's what we started doing instead of going to the library. But the other day we were walking around and having a family day downtown, and we hadn't been to the library in like 6 months. And we decided to walk through there, and I was blown away with how oppressive all of the books are towards my belief system. In the children's section, in the adult section, it's like, wow, they are overtly attacking all of my beliefs right here. Now, listen, do we want to equip ourselves to defend our faith? Absolutely. But you do not want to live 24/7 in a spot where you're always being attacked for what you believe and you're always having to question everything you believe. You want to be built up. You want to be nourished. You want to know what the truth is, meditate on his truth day and night. And so that when you are faced with those lies, you just see it for what it is. And then usually it's the opposite. People are bombarded with lies and deceit and false interpretation of scripture and false interpretation of biblical roles or what a healthy family really looks like. And so you're doing all that you can to try to scrape out a healthy family existence when everything you're digesting and everything you're bringing into your home and your head is contrary to that.
You're exactly. Like this fish, like overworked, panting all the time, trying to remind yourself why you're doing this, because it's a lot easier to go the other way.
Yes, that's exactly right. And sometimes all people will say, wow, thank you so much for talking about this. Like nobody talks about this stuff. And I'll think, what do you mean? Because
we think everybody, we listen to.
When I'm listening, I listen to people that are, yes, they're challenging my faith, but they're also, I feel like, encouraging me in the way that I feel like I need to be growing and learning and bringing my family. And then we go to the library, or you see, you'll be at a restaurant, you see what's on the television, you're thinking, oh, this is still what the majority of the world is exposing themselves to. But that doesn't have to be you. It doesn't have to be us.
No, and I do think it's healthy for our homes to be echo chambers. I really do.
Yes.
That's where you're growing your roots. That's where you're building your foundation. And then you go out from there. You have a very clear belief system. You have a very clear logic and of what you believe and why you believe it, and a support system behind that. And it's very easy for us, and it's very easy for our children to filter, just filter, 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 filter. And you aren't stressed out or confused by any of the stuff you're seeing out there. Okay, I want to go back to my boredom piece because I do think it's critical before we end this episode. Okay,
Nice.
when it comes to battling discontentment in motherhood, something I want to say: our lives in the 21st century are so easy, especially as stay-at-home mothers. And this is something that goes back to, I think of that quote: "The harder you are on yourself, the infinitely easier life will be on you." We struggle a lot as stay-at-home moms. We have a lot of hard in our life because our life is too easy. And because our life is so easy, we struggle with the hardships that are placed on us by us not being hard on ourselves. And I think that, you just picture the amount of time it took to just get a chicken and kill it and pluck it, and that was your only option for lunch, right? So you're going through all these tasks to get the chicken. Well, at the end of the cooking time, you're feeling pretty good about yourself for getting the chicken. You have this fulfillment built in. You also are serving your family a nutritious meal because that was the only option. There's all these things that were built into a harder lifestyle. And now that we could have, drive through and pick up a fast food burger, now all of a sudden we are out and about and we aren't thinking about lunch until right before we need to eat. And we're out spending money that we don't have. We go shopping and we feel all this discontent because we see all the things that we can't purchase. We have all this time to sit and scroll on social media because and feel this comparison trap on there. Well, it's not because our lives are hard. It's because our lives are easy. We shouldn't have the time to be sitting on our rear ends doing that for, I don't know, what the stats say, 4 hours a day, because we have the ease of cars, we are able to get in out of our houses easier. So we go to all the trouble to get the kids dressed and load them up and drop them off at a daycare so we could do a workout or drive somewhere, try to get through a grocery store or something, and then get home and we're just wiped. And it's like, why? Because of all these conveniences we have, our lives have become very hard for us. Our health has become hard for us. We're gaining weight and we can't control the weight. And we have all these health struggles that we're now dealing with because of the ease of the 21st century. It's kind of this weird little thing. And so I would just challenge you that we don't have too much time on our hands, or we don't have too little time on our hands. We have too much. And that is why we get up, we can slog through the day, and we barely get anything done. And the tasks are, like a stay-at-home mom's biggest complaint is the laundry. Any mom's biggest complaint is like the laundry just piles up. We have hours and hours in our day to get the laundry done. Most of us do, but we don't do it because we would rather procrastinate and waste our time, and we don't even know where we're wasting our time. We have no clue how much time we're wasting by all these outside things. So what my encouragement to you, if you are feeling that you are discontent in motherhood, is to get a hobby, get an interest. Find something that is stimulating you intellectually. Like a lot of people during 2020 got into sourdough because it was keeping them from being depressed. It was something to learn and struggle through and trial and error, and it takes your brain power, and it's like this test that you're working through, right? Well, if you don't know what to get a hobby in, what's your biggest pain point right now? Like if it's your health, start learning about health, get books on health, watch YouTubers on health, listen to podcasters on health, try different things out. That was something that I've recently very into again with this new, phase of having a fifth baby and talking about like, well, maybe there are more kids in our future. And if so, I've got to get some things figured out. And that's been such a fun thing for me to read about and learn about. It's serving our family, it's serving our home, but it's also a personal interest. And so I'm just so much more efficient throughout my day because I'm really excited about those little pockets that I get to devote to this interest that I have. If you have no interests in your life, then they're going to be filled with these time wasting things that are tearing us down in motherhood. If we don't have any interests that we go to as soon as we get that little break in the day, then we're going to just get on and watch someone's dancing TikTok video and wonder why we aren't as skinny as they are. Okay, so it's just not going to serve us if we do not have interests in our home. And also this is big for our kids because our kids see us not being interested in anything, and then we wonder why we can't get them interested in anything. Whereas if they see us always learning, always growing, seeking to better ourselves and improve ourselves and grow in knowledge, then that's something that they see as an awesome thing too, and that's something that they want to do. That's inspirational to our husbands if they aren't in this growth state of mind. That's something that I really appreciate about Elisha is I feel like he's always learning. He's always bringing home something new, whether that's theology or on physical fitness, or right now it's on family, or it could be on any number of things. It could be on homemaking. If your house is a pile, then learn to homemake like people do it. People have these restful, beautiful, peaceful homes. So if that's not your home, get good at it. That can be an excellent hobby to get into. So anyways, that's my first point. The second one is being hospitable. Have people in your home. This is really big. Instead of always trying to go outside your home for things, welcome people inside your home. And if you're embarrassed about your home, don't be embarrassed about the stuff like the holes in the wall and the kids writing on the wall and stuff like that. But if it's embarrassing to the extent of like, well, it's always just a pile, and so I never feel comfortable having people over, have that be a motivator to get your home to a place where there's not junk everywhere and there's not clutter everywhere and there's not piles of laundry everywhere. That's a great motivator to get those tasks done so that you can have a ministry within your home at your dining table. Service is a great way to spend our time with our children. Just learning, growing. If you have no interest and you can't think of what to do with your time, or you feel like your days are maxed, what's your husband into? Support him. How can you support him? How can you serve him? How can you get excited about something that he's already excited about? Maybe learn about that so that you guys can have more conversations about that. That's something that I feel like has really been healthy in our marriage, is Elisha getting excited about something that I'm excited about and vice versa. But I really think going back to, cleaning the diapers is, again, rarely fulfilling. Doing dishes is not this exciting task. It's okay. It's not like you have to make dishes exciting. Or laundry rarely is using our intellectual strength or passion or stuff like that. But like, I love folding my laundry now because I turn on a YouTube about something I want to learn about, or my brain is just thinking through all these things I want to implement in our home and wondering how they're going to work. And I can use that time to just think about these higher order tasks that are more stimulating and more enjoyable and more thought-provoking. I think that as God's creation, we are creators like him in a smaller way, obviously much, much, much smaller. And I think we are born to create and expand and do trial and error and grow. And I think that that's a very, very healthy thing for our homes. So if I just wanted to say, if you're feeling discontent, the problem is not the children. The problem is not your home. The problem is not the tasks you've got to do every day that keep popping up. Most likely, you're bored. Most likely, you don't have enough going on. And that's why we're looking to outward things. That's why we're going, I'm discontent. I want something more. I want something more. Well, bring in, infuse that life, learn something, grow in something. It doesn't need to be a girls' date out, or more self-care or something like that. That's not what's making us discontent. Obviously, those mindsets are huge. I think that's like the first and foremost thing is like, what do we believe about motherhood?
Yes.
But yeah, that's my little
Wow, that's good.
soapbox.
That was a good one. That was a good soapbox. I do think that so often we're so simple-minded and we lack creativity and ultimately we're lazy. We don't think that we can have hobbies and fulfilling activities that support the home.
Hmm.
Our brain tells us, oh, like the only thing, it's just simple-mindedness. You're not being creative. You're being
And
lazy.
we've both been there. We both go in and out of these seasons.
Yeah.
I'm not like
By
I'm preaching to the
simple-minded,
choir.
yeah, but by simple-minded, I mean like, oh, the reason I'm discontent is because we're not able to do this trip like this family's doing this trip.
Yes.
The reason I'm discontent is because we don't have a house like this family has a house, or I'm doing this for work, or we don't make this much money. No, I've been a simple-minded fool like that many times throughout the duration of our life.
I want to talk real quick about the sleep thing too, because this is like a theory that we've had, and we've been actually looking up studies on it. But it's that you don't like every parent complains that like they don't get sleep. But the thing is that most often it's just because we're tired because we aren't excited about what our life is. We aren't excited about what we're doing in the day. If you take someone who has a fulfilling, career or hobby or goal of any kind, and you put them on a few hours of sleep, they don't tell you they're tired all the time. They tell you they're excited about what they get to do.
Yes.
But then you talk to a parent and they're just like, oh, I'm just like so tired. And it doesn't matter how many hours of sleep we're getting a night, we're just so tired.
Yes.
And it comes from a lack of fulfillment, a lack of joy, a lack of purpose in what we are doing, not necessarily the physical sleep. Because there's
Yes.
people that get way less sleep than we do and are way more excited and not tired when it comes to their life.
That's right.
So if you're tired of your life, shake things up a bit. Yeah, and just infuse that fresh vision, the fresh vision for your family, the fresh vision for your homemaking, and the fresh vision for you growing as a person, continuing to grow, because as a mother, you're in a leadership role. You have all these children that are watching you, and if we aren't leading by example, if we aren't growing ourselves, then how are these little plants how are we supposed to be like the greenhouse environment for our children to grow and flourish?
Yes. Amen.
We need to wrap this up. Well, she's like, I've got no more to say. We
Oh,
gotta move on.
are you kidding me? I'm regretting saying I wish you would have taken the whole episode because you've got so much goodness. You've got so many nuggets to share.
No, I am
all of
so
this.
grateful for everything you said. We're on the same page, right?
Yes,
With stats, you
absolutely.
got what I was saying in the
Yes,
middle?
and I didn't mean to
I
nitpick
don't want
on
to be
that.
off on that.
I don't think you're off. I didn't want our listeners to hear the wrong thing.
Yeah, which I'm glad you confirmed.
Cool. All right. Folks, thank you all so much for listening. Hope you enjoyed this episode, and we'll talk to you next week.